choppy choppy PP.
Choppy choppy PP.
Choppy choppy PP.
Choppy choppy PP.
What's going on, guys? It's Anthony from Rated R for Wrestling. Welcome back to the channel, and I got an interesting one for you guys today in a new series about the Attitude Era, a bygone era that so many of us look back on so fondly if we grew up during that time, or we were straight up adults, or if you weren't born yet, you went back and seen it from everything WWE shows you on the network and everything like that, and seen all the cool, awesome, out there moments with tremendous superstars, Hall of Famers up and down the roster. It's such a great time. But in saying that, there's been some really bad storylines that had happened during that time period, and this is what this series of videos is going to be all about. We'll be taking one angle from that time period of the Attitude Era, dissecting it, and talking about how terrible and how ridiculous it was. Now, the one I got for you today is quite interesting. Maybe the craziest moment in the history of professional wrestling, at least in WWE for that time period. Maybe only beat out by this one. But more on that one in another video. But like I said, there was a lot of nonsense going on during the Attitude Era, a lot of Vince Russo-esque nonsense, crazy shenanigans. As much as good stuff that he did come up with some really big stinkers and some weird ass shit. But looking back at the Attitude Era, some of these storylines that I'm going to be covering in subsequent videos, but especially this one, you just go back and watch this stuff and you're thinking to yourself, how the hell did my parents let me watch this nonsense on television? But you got to say a shout out to the 90s for letting us see a lot of stuff that we may have, probably shouldn't have during that age. But again, the one we're going to be talking about today is Val Venis and Kaientai and everything that went into that angle that was short-lived, outlandish, out there, and just crazy ass nonsense. Like I said, maybe the craziest angle in the history of WWE, like I said before, other than that one that I showed you. Again, more on that one in another video. But let's dive into the Val Venis Kaientai incident that happened in 1998 on a Monday Night Raw. But how does this even happen? How does this storyline even take place? How do they get to where they got in this storyline? Well, to get to this point, shortly after Val Venis debuted in 1998, he was undefeated for a short amount of time. During this time, he would be teaming with Taka Michinoku, but all the while be seducing Mrs. Yamaguchi, the wife of Mr. Yamaguchi, the head of Kaientai. As it would later come to light that Mrs. Yamaguchi and Val Venis were doing a lot of high spots and false finishes outside the ring, and the shit was on. It all started on the longest running episodic program in the history of cable. Thank you, Michael Cole, for that long ass sentence. So what would happen is Kaientai would proceed to attack Val Venis, trying to get exact revenge for what he did with the wife of Mr. Yamaguchi. And this would lead to Taka Michinoku turning on his partner Val Venis to join Kaientai.
Wellington, what the hell is that? He drop-kicked his own partner. Taka Michinoku did it.
And join in on the festivities of trying to attack Val Venis. And they would succeed. So on this fateful night on a Monday Night Raw in 1998, Kaientai proceeded to attack Val Venis, bring him backstage, tie him up, arms up in the air, and what might be the most batshit crazy scene that we've ever seen in the history of professional wrestling, up there with the likes of this,
Don't go in there!
and this, and even this. Now, what exactly happened here? Whatever this is, what happened here? Was it ever solved what exactly took place on this cold Monday night in whatever the hell town this Raw took place in? Yes, and the payoff isn't as long or as drawn out as you think it would be. Now, as they have Val Venis tied up in the backstage, all of Kaientai yelling at Mrs. Yamaguchi, screaming and shrieking in terror as what she sees what's about to happen to her lover on the side, Val Venis. Basically, Val Venis built around the gimmick of the porn star, and basically the whole gimmick being revolving around his genitalia. So the lights cut out as soon as Mr. Yamaguchi brings up that blade from that sword and drops it down on you-know-what, intending to cut off you-know-what and basically end the character, the whole gimmick of Val Venis, only a few months in to his debut. So the lights cut out, and we're just like, what the hell just happened here? There's no more mention of it later on in the night. It just happens. The lights cut out. It's a false finish. Now, what happens is the next week, like I said, this wasn't a long, drawn-out angle. It seems like they just came up with this angle, did it, and we're like, holy shit, that was nuts. It kind of ridiculous. Let's just kind of pivot away from it. Or they just threw the shit against the wall and just see what stuck. Obviously, none of it did. So the next week, Val Venis does appear on Monday Night Raw. Obviously injured a bit from the beatdown he received the week prior from Kaientai. But he says thanks to a little bit of shrinkage, I guess the room must have been pretty cold. So a mess up from Kaientai, not realizing that the room was so cold that it would shrink his appendage, you end up missing your intended target with that blade. But not only was he aided by the cold temperature in that room, he was also aided by a mystery man who shut off the lights just before that cold steel blade came down on Val Venis's manhood.
Choppy, choppy, beep.
And he was saved by none other than John Wayne Bobbitt. Now, some of you may be too young to know who John Wayne Bobbitt is, but he's a man infamously known for getting his junk cut off by his wife. It's just brought up as a quick haha whatever moment, and it just really has no payoff to it. Like I said, it wasn't really drawn out that well, it just kind of was what it was. So this leading after this, you would see Val Venis challenge Kaientai to a gauntlet match. He would have to take on each member of the team individually, eventually losing to Taka Michinoku with the Michinoku driver and ending his undefeated streak. Which doesn't make a ton of sense, right? Val Venis' undefeated streak ends to Taka Michinoku of Kaientai after they just try to cut his penis off. It's almost as bad as Mr. Perfect not being so perfect and losing his perfect streak against Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Almost as bad as that. So the angle that started off like some A+ grade stuff, that some edge of your seat suspense storytelling, ended in a short, quick payoff that really had no effect. It kind of just went away and wasn't even mentioned later on the subsequent weeks after the gauntlet match and Taka defeating Val Venis. So again, the Attitude Era has some of the best stuff we've ever seen in professional wrestling. Or you weren't old enough to see all that went down, the good and the bad. I'm here to let you guys know that this is probably one of the worst ones we've seen or have ever seen in pro wrestling, nonetheless, the Attitude Era. But again, we saw so many cool moments, so many great superstars, so many memorable shots, so many memorable pay-per-views, matches, and all that stuff. But just as memorable as the good stuff was, so is the bad stuff. And this was one of the worst. Val Venis being attacked by Kaientai, being assaulted by Kaientai, and obviously committing this close to committing a crime against Val Venis by cutting off the only thing that made his gimmick worthwhile. Again, they had some flaccid stinkers. You gotta love it. Thanks for watching this first installment in this series of Attitude Era storylines that went too far for some. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Love to hear you guys in the comment section. If you remember this angle, did you see it live? Did you see it later on? And what you thought of it when you first saw it, if you saw it live, and what you thought about it later on when you replayed it again. I would like to know all your guys' takes on this crazy nuts angle. If you have not watched it, go watch it on the network, please. Check this stuff out. This is nuts. Go watch it on YouTube. Pull it up. This is crazy stuff. You saw small clips of it in this video, but make sure you watch the whole full scene, how everything broke down here, because this thing is wild. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Drop a like and sub to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.